right, so I just wanted to take a moment and explain my process for creating images for client website projects or even for social media. But in this case, it's specifically for blogs. So I'm going to click on the blog link for this client here is A to Z Blinds. It's my former boss Tina, and she has hired me to do blogs for her website. So this image right here is a good example of an AI generated image that I used some AI tools, completely made the image from scratch. And if we click into the blog here, we can see there's another one as well. So this is actually the first image in the series that I made. And when I tried to make it wider for this featured image spot here, the AI changed it to this current image. So it was a slightly different view. Apparently it was too hard for the AI to extend the width of this image, but it's okay. It worked out. And after the initial version was actually just the blinds and no lady, and I actually added her in later. So it's not impossible to do things like that. It's actually good to know that you can do a lot of things with AI right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that I did for this blog, but I'm going to do it for another one that we recently created that doesn't have any images yet. So first things first, I'm going to log in, and then we're going to look at the list of blogs on the website, and the latest one here is still in draft status, and my daughter Jojo helped me work on it. She actually helped create it, so that's good. There are a few things that I needed to do to finish it. That's why it still says uncategorized, but I'll do those later. For now, we're just going to open up the blog and we're going to look at the topic and try to figure out what should the images be for this blog. So the topic overall is best blinds for different rooms in your house. So more or less that's what the image needs to be about somehow. And sometimes when it's difficult to think of one specific image that would encapsulate that statement or that keyword that we're trying to rank for, what helps is to think of something that may not be exactly what that keyword is, but it may be related to people, or maybe related to a customer, or an experience that they would like to have. And then as long as it connects even loosely to the main topic, then that's fine. So in this case, I would probably try to think of, a homeowner who, didn't pick the right blinds. Maybe that would be the supporting image, the one that goes further down in the content. But maybe the main featured image, which we would add to the blog using this button here on the side, in the sidebar, maybe that image needs to be more of like what we're trying to achieve, which is the best blinds. So, once we've done some of that thinking about the topic, then we can go ahead and go over to our tool here called GenSpark, genspark.ai/agents. This website is really good, even though there's a lot of AI tools out there that will make images for you. It's really good for a free tool that does a lot of things. It's okay. Okay, so we took a super quick break for my daughter Jojo, who's here with me right now, to go blow her nose and take care of some stuff. So anyway, moving on, we have this tool called GenSpark AI. What I like about it is that for free, you can create a number of different assets for websites, and it does a better job, even though it may not do better in every area than other tools that are specialized for that one task. it does a lot of different things, and it does them all pretty well. So um, what I like to do, it has all these agents listed here, but what I like to do for creating a new image is I go over here to new, and you hover over the plus button, then you can come down to AI image. If you click that, it tells you that there's a little promotion going on. Just click OK, open a new tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use multiple of these tools for this task, but I'm going to start with generating an image. So you do have to log in to use this tool. It's a free account. I just use my Google account. So there are different options here for which specific AI model you're going to use, but I just stick with Google's Nano Banana. That seems to be good enough. So then I always like to click auto prompt, because what that does is it allows you to describe in very simple terms what you would like to have it do, but then it extrapolates from that simple statement as much information as it can into a full and complete prompt. And on my website, I actually have a prompt builder that helps me with creating a prompt for an AI image, and you basically just go and fill in all these different form fields, and at the end it gives you a prompt. But what GenSpark does is it does this automatically. If you just say an image of a woman eating a donut or whatever, it's going to create a full, complete prompt with all the details that you may have missed. And so that prompt is going to be much better quality than what you would normally just type in here. And I don't know if this feature here is ever going to work. Every single time I click 16:9 for the size, 3:2 would also probably be fine, but it doesn't ever seem to work. It always just defaults back to this size here. But it's either way, it's fine to just click it, because maybe someday it'll actually work. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my basic prompt, which for this blog post, I really just want a, first of all, I'm going to tell it create an image, but create a stock photo style image. And I like to say realistic because sometimes it gets confused, what that means, but a realistic stock photo style image. I don't want it to be cartoony, and that's kind of what it defaults to. If you don't tell it you want it realistic, it defaults to an illustration. So create a realistic stock photo style image of a homeowner, and it actually helps a lot to tell it the gender. So female's fine, female homeowner, enjoying her living room space with top down, bottom up cellular shades in her windows, which let in the right amount of light while providing privacy. And so that's not really a complete prompt, but it is giving enough information where it could then create a prompt for the specific tool that it has in its arsenal. So at this point, that probably should be enough. It leaves enough to the imagination for the AI to fill the gaps and stuff. So we'll see if it works. It's not always going to work perfectly the first time. You may have to shift and adjust your approach with what you provided. But let's go ahead and try that. I also like how relatively quick it is. ChatGPT creates pretty good images for free, but it takes a long time. And Gemini also kind of takes a while. I think it's not because their resources are limited or whatever, but if you're trying to do it for free, they're just trying to make it painful so that you will sign up for their paid plan. But thankfully, this one works pretty good, pretty quick. So again, the image is 1024 by 1024. So it's, 1 by 1. It's not at all 16:9 ratio, aspect ratio. But this is okay because we can use this to crop it down or extend it out if we need to, because GenSpark also allows you to extend images out on the left and the right or on the top and bottom. So for now, this is fine. I'm just going to download it. And sometimes you have to think about, if I want this to be rectangular, like, okay. We're going to take a quick break. All right, we're back. So anyway, if we want to make this image rectangular, like a normal featured image, then we're going to either need to extend the left and right boundaries, or we're going to need to crop it. And even though I'm used to cropping, and it usually does fine for most images, sometimes you lose important details by doing that. So if we go up to our downloads icon, and then we can click the folder icon right here. This is the latest image that we downloaded. We can click the folder to open it in the downloads folder. I'll just pull that over here. So here's the image that we just downloaded. I usually open up another tab where I can get to my project folder, so WMS for Woodruff Multimedia Services. Then we're going to go to her client folder, A to Z. And then we're going to go, here's the blog folder. I always like to create a new folder for the date that I'm currently working. So today's the 12th. Enter that folder, and then we're going to drag this one up here and plop it in there. So now we can get started working on this. So again, we can either crop it or we can extend it and make it bigger. So I would like to make it bigger. I don't know how well that's going to turn out, but we can try it. So let's go back to GenSpark, close that. And this image is good for now, so I don't need this open anymore. So I'm going to go back over here and create a new image, and we can actually close that tab. So to make an image larger, and not necessarily in terms of the file size, but just in terms of, right now it's only showing this much of the mountain, but you want it to show more of the mountain. So for us, we want to show more of that living room. So we're going to go into our project folder where that blog post image is at. We're going to open it, and let's pick 16:9. Now, the problem that you run into when you do this is sometimes the AI is going to make up some really weird stuff because it usually does a good job. But if you have really big spaces on either side of the image, it might be too much for the AI to figure out what goes there. Okay, so maybe we want to do one actually a little bit smaller. If you're working with a square and you want to make it rectangular, 4:3 is probably better. But if you're working with something that's already 4:3 and you want to extend it to 16:9, that's probably okay, But if you're making these gray bars here really, really big, the AI is probably going to make something really goofy. So just to illustrate that, let's try it out and see what happens. It may not be that bad. We'll see, because sometimes it's worked for me and sometimes it doesn't. When I tried it with the yellow blinds image that I was showing off earlier, what it did was it added wallpaper on either side of that blind. That it was the diagonal view, and that's why I was like, I didn't want wallpaper. I wanted you to extend the blinds for a wider window, But We'll see what it does in this case, because maybe it's zoomed out enough, you know. Okay, so that's not that bad, actually, you know. Curtains are fine, but it shows that there's, you know, the blinds. It shows realistic living room and everything. Um, One thing to keep in mind is that we never, you'll see it better when I actually open this up in GIMP, but I never want to include the little GenSpark logo in the bottom right. So if we crop the image to be exactly the shape that we need it, we can leave that out, or if it's still in the way, we can remove it a different way. So for now, I really like this one, so I'm going to go ahead and download it. And now it's image 7. It's in the downloads folder. So I'm going to open this back up, go to downloads. And part of the reason why it, you know, names it that is because there's other images in here that I worked on previously. So this is the original one from yesterday. And they, like I said, they added, it added wallpaper on either side. It was really goofy looking. But these are all working files that I don't need anymore, so I'm going to delete them. And I'll take this one and put it in our project folder. And so at this point, we're going to open up GIMP. So the way I do that is I just right click on the image that I want to edit. And okay, it's a little slow. But then I'm going to go up here to open with, and then I'm going to go over to GIMP. And I have the older version of GIMP, which is, it has some extra features that the newer version does not. But both of these are free. And you can find the old one online somewhere, but now the new one is missing a few features. I think they'll bring them back eventually, but it was a big update. So that's why some of those features are gone. But anyway, we'll open up in the new GIMP. It's GIMP 3.0 or 3, yeah, so it's 3.0. And GIMP is a free image editing software that I really like. I've used it for a long time. I learned how to use Photoshop when I was in college, but right away I learned about GIMP and I started using it. And it's always done just as good of a job as Photoshop for most things that I have to do with it. So the size of the image that we need is, I'll show you in a second, but first we got to go to the crop tool. So once I click on the crop tool, then I'm going to come down here and look at the aspect ratio. So this is going to be the size, 1312 by 736. So that's the featured image size that I need for the blogs on my client's website. Now, I can use as much of the image as I can, you know. So you see here that it pretty much matches the rectangular shape that we already had pretty well. Now, if I want to get rid of this GenSpark logo, I can pretty easily do that either by just, you know, pulling the guide bars up and it crops that right out of the image. Or if I want to actually keep that part of the image, I'll show you how to remove it a more manual way. So if I hit enter, it crops the image. You can see there's a little gray area between the yellow border line, because that part got cropped out. So we actually have to go to layer and layer to image size, because the layer is actually bigger right now than the image itself. So we want to shrink that down. Then we're going to select our rectangle select tool, and we're going to hold down a control button on the keyboard just to the right of the section that we want to edit. And I'm going to use my mouse scroll wheel while holding control on my keyboard, or command if you're on a Mac. And I'm going to zoom in so where I can really see it better. And then I'm going to select the portion of the image that I want to get rid of. So that's pretty good. And the tool that I'm going to use to get rid of that is the stamp tool. Or it looks like a stamp, but it's called the clone tool. So what this allows me to do is to set an anchor point by holding down control. Once that little, you know, once that little symbol disappears, it looks like a not allowed sign, you know, then I can click. And then the reason I'm selecting up here on the border line from the shelf to the floor is because that's the part that the logo is actually covering up. And so I want to fix that part. So I have to select a part that is similar to it, but that's not covered up. And I can copy those pixels by going over here. And the reason that I put the middle of the circle or the crosshair right on the line is because that's an easy reference point for me to put my crosshair on the line over here and then just, you know, make that part disappear. See? So I can actually, I don't really want to go over this light area here. I did just for illustration purposes, but it doesn't match the rest of the floor. So I'm actually going to undo that. So my anchor point is still here. I'm going to copy those pixels right here just for that corner of the logo. But then I'm going to come over here and grab, you know, like this part of the logo is below a light section. So I'm going to come over here and get a sample from, I'm going to set my anchor point right here because this light section here seems like it would kind of match this part of the floor. So once I do that, then I'm going to do like that. And you can see the dark area here is darker than this. So I probably need to come over here and get some of this dark section here, set my anchor point, come over here and make this darker. So it blends a little bit better, but I can actually come up here as well and finish that off like that. So if I get rid of this selection box, you can still see there's some fragments or remnants that don't look totally realistic. So I'm going to come back up here, I'm going to clean it up. So I set my anchor point right here because I'm going to work in this dark section here that kind of matches. It matches this and this kind of match. So I'm going to come over here, paint some happy little trees, just joking, and try to clean this up. Oh, I made a mess. So that's better. That's better. Now there's still a little bit of the original GenSpark logo right there. So I'm going to come up here and get this again and just clean that up. And then maybe I need to get some of this again and try to clean this up. Okay, so it's not perfect, but one way that we can fix that is, because this is very bright and this is a little bit darker, what we can do is use another similar tool, similar to the clone tool, and it's called the Band-Aid or healing tool. And that one, what it does is instead of exactly copying the pixels that we had selected for our anchor point, what it does is it sort of blends the recipient pixels with our copied pixels. So I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to blend these together and heal that obvious mistake. Okay, so then that's done. That looks fine. Now that we've finished that, long explanation for a very simple thing, but basically just that's a very important skill to have when using GIMP. So now that we've done that part, we can crop the image, or actually we already cropped it. So all we need to do now is resize the image for what we need. Now we know we need the image to be at least this big. Now for another project, if we were trying to do like an evergreen web page instead of a blog, we would need a much larger image, like 1920 by 1080. Okay, 1920 by 1080 is much bigger than 1312 by 736. Okay, so if we need something much bigger, there's another tool in GenSpark that we can use to make the image much bigger. But in this case, the image is actually larger than what we need. It's 1344 by 754, and we need it to be a little bit smaller. So we're just going to change it to 1312. Oops. 1312, tab, tab, and then the height needs to be 736. Tab, tab. Then down here for the resolution, we want it to be looking nice on the web. And so right now it's set up to look nice for print. For print, you really need 300 pixels per inch to make it look realistic when you print the image. So 300 pixels per inch is a lot of, it's very high resolution. It's a lot of visual information packed into a small space. So we can actually decrease this to 72 for the web, hit enter, and that will look just fine on a website. You wouldn't want to print an image that has this few pixels or this small amount of, or small resolution, but it looks fine on the web. So we'll scale it. It only made it a little bit smaller, but that's fine. Now we're going to export it. So once we export the image, we're going to rename it, and you know, we want to name it something helpful. All right, so we need to rename the image, and to rename it, we want to think of what is visually happening in the image that we can put in a file name. And this makes it really helpful for later on if we're looking at a bunch of file names inside of a folder to be able to easily tell which one we're looking for. Also, it helps for searching. When we're searching on a computer for an image, it helps to have descriptive file names. So that's what we try to do whenever we create images, make sure there's a descriptive file name. It doesn't have to be really long, but it helps to be descriptive. So I'm going to type, I have to reselect this real quick. So I'm going to type woman enjoying well-lit living room with blinds, with best blinds. Okay, and then at the end of it, we're going to add the size of the file. So 1312 by 736. It's not actually the size, but it's the dimensions. So then we'll hit enter, and it saves or exports the file. But first, it gives us these settings. I like to go with 90 for the quality level, and 90 out of 100 is pretty decent. But it's going to be kind of a large file size, so 205 kilobytes. That's not bad for a blog. I normally see it get a little bit smaller, but I think I'll leave it like that for now. So we're going to go ahead and just hit export. So now I can open up my folder, my project folder, and see that the image is right here. It doesn't have the little GenSpark logo like the original. And you can see it's 1312 by 736 right here in the dimensions. So that's good. So now we can minimize that, minimize this. Okay, so we're done with this now, but if you were going to make a larger image, like for a hero image, okay, so let's look at an example. This is pretty small, okay, it's just for a blog featured image, but if I go to the home page, she's got a very large hero image. If you need a bigger image, it's never going to be that big by default when you create it with any AI tool, for the most part. You know, maybe ChatGPT might make them bigger, but most of them that I deal with, like Gemini, whatnot, they're usually a little bit smaller than that. So I want them to be nice and big. So if that's the case, we can come back over here, go to New Image, and the feature that you would use to make a really big image is Image Unblur. And I don't know if that makes sense right off the bat. It seems like it should just make it not blurry. But what you're doing is you're asking it to make it not blurry at a bigger size. So if we click into that and pick this one, for instance, just as an example, actually not that one, but this one. Let's say we want to make this a hero image later on. We could open this up and just click unblur, and then the image that we get is going to be significantly larger than the one that we put in. So I unblurred it. It's not finished yet. Maybe I didn't click it hard enough. Okay, so now it's working. You can see the little percentage and the status indicator there. So when it's done, we can download it, and it'll be like 4,000 something pixels wide, which is pretty good. So if I go back to my downloads, I'm not going to keep this image, but you can see how big it is. It's 4096 by 2296. So that's big enough for a hero image for sure. And if we actually open this in our image viewer, it has pretty good detail. It kind of messed up her face. Like sometimes in order to get it bigger, it might mess up some details. So you got to watch out for that. If you're going to use it as a hero image on a website, it may not matter that much. But if it does look pretty funny, then you may have to do a little editing. Anyway, thankfully we don't have to do that in this case. We can just delete it. And then I'm going to go back to my project folder, and I want to edit this one real quick and see what her face looks like. So her face looks better in this one, even though it's pixelated. It looks more realistic. It doesn't look all weird like the other one did. So anyway, thankfully that's all we need in this case. So we're going to go back to our blog, and we're going to set the featured image. And now all we have to do is drag and drop this one into here. And then we can give a descriptive alt text. So a female homeowner, and it doesn't have to be completely different from the file name, but it should be descriptive enough that anybody, even if they're using a screen reader, or maybe the image didn't load properly, they're going to be able to see this description and be able to know what was there, what was intended to be there. So a female homeowner enjoying her living room with proper lighting and privacy. Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out real quick is pretty much all of these images, this one is not AI generated, but pretty much all of the rest of them, for the most part, are AI generated. So some of these earlier ones did not turn out as good in some ways, like if you look at the details, but they start getting better and better because the models are getting better, like the AI models. So it's really quite surprising the quality of images that you can get using AI. But that's pretty much where we're going to be going in the future. I think, stock photo websites are probably done for because they are not providing a lot of value for what their prices are. But anyway, yeah. And so, for instance, on Getty Images, which I use in my day job, my company has my employer has a subscription there, and they charge like $500 for a single image. That's really expensive. So anyway, we'll select that image for now. You can see it's been assigned here, and we do need at least one more, but for now I'm just going to click publish. And there's still some other things that need to be fixed, but I want to publish it real quick and just look at the front end and see what it looks like. So that's really not bad. And most people with their naked eye are not going to be able to look at that image and see anything wrong with it. It looks realistic enough. It looks, like it was a real image, not AI generated. So pretty cool. The next thing we need to make is a supporting image for down here. So what I like to think of is, most blogs are talking about a specific problem and helping people to solve that specific problem. So the problem in this case is that people tend to pick the wrong blinds or the wrong type of blinds for the specific room in their house. Sometimes they want these really nice fancy blinds, like what would go well in your living room, and they wind up getting those for the whole house. They get some in their bathroom or whatever because they're buying them from Home Depot and they really don't know what they're doing. So they buy a bunch of these fancy blinds, they put them all over their house, and then they find out that, oh, these do not work well in the bathroom or in the kitchen where the kitchen has a lot of moisture and grease, and you know, they get damaged, they don't last as long as they should. So you really want to pick the right type of blinds for each room. So that's the problem that we're addressing is in this blog, what are the main things that you want to pick, you want to look out for? So since this image is really showing the ideal scenario, like, okay, you pick the right blinds, you're enjoying yourself in your house, we want to have an image that shows the opposite, which is the worst scenario. Like somebody got the wrong blinds, now they're ruined, they didn't last, they're messed up, and they need to be thrown away. So something like that. So what we're gonna do is go back to GenSpark, and in all my time using this tool, I haven't yet run into limits using this tool for a simple project. If I keep on trying to use this all day, they'll probably eventually tell me I hit a limit. But maybe it's just because I'm not doing a lot in a given day, but I haven't hit those limits, so it's kind of nice. So I'm going to come back into here and generate the base image. Might as well pick 16:9. Actually, in this case, we do probably want it to be a square or 4:3 or something like that. So for our description, we're going to say create a realistic stock photo style image of a man who is confused why his fancy real wood blinds are warped and peeling after installing them in the kitchen, where cooking grease and moisture easily get in the atmosphere. And that's probably all we need to say. And hopefully it's going to create a nice image. So let's try that. Real wood blinds are very nice. They're very fancy, but they're also very weak. They're made out of wood, and they have stain or paint on them, and it peels and it warps and it gives problems. So hopefully it'll make a nice image. It's a little complex, but that's pretty bad. So yeah, I mean, that happens to people at times. Now it does look a little bit weird with the AI generating it. It looks a little unrealistic, but you know what? At this point, it's good enough. Even though there's some problems, it's good enough. So anyway, this is good enough for us. We're going to take it as it is, and it should be fine. So we can close this now. Come back over here. This I don't know why, but it looks like the featured image got unset somehow. So I'm going to pick that one again and then save. Okay, so we forgot to close GIMP, so I'm going to close that. And it's asking me if I want to discard the changes. Yes, I do. So I'm going to find my downloads folder, and I have this, so I'm going to drag it over to my project folder. Now, even though I'm going to use it as is, it's still way too big. It's like 2.11 megabytes. That's really large. So even though it's only 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, it's pretty large in file size. So I'm going to use GIMP to make it smaller. in terms of the dimensions, but also in terms of file size. One way we're going to do that is by switching it from a PNG file type to a JPG file type. So PNG is a very good quality file type for photos, but it winds up leaving the photos very, very large in some cases. There are ways to optimize it, but you're still limited how small of a file type you can get. So JPEG or JPG file type is better for the web, but it's also better for images like this where you have, a nice sharp looking photo, but no text or anything like that, not a lot of symbols or whatever, and you could afford to lose a little bit of the detail in order to get a smaller file size without losing a lot of the quality. So that's what JPEGs are great for. So I'm going to go up here to the image tab in the menu. I'm going to go down to scale image because we really only need it to be about 350 pixels. Okay, so keep tabbing until you get to scale. So it's the right size now. Then I'm going to, when I go to export it, I'm going to change the file name, first of all, to something that I actually like. So, man confused why blinds are ruined. And then the file size is 350 by 350. Then we're going to add .jpg and remove the PNG file extension. So the file extension is now .jpg. That means it's going to be a JPEG instead. Then when I click enter to export it, it's going to give me some options in this menu over here. I can choose 90, and look, the file size is all the way down to 42.5 kilobytes. So that's way smaller. That's like over 10 times smaller if I understand correctly. But anyway, it's really, really small compared to 2 megabytes. Which is basically like a little more than 2,000 kilobytes. So anyway, now that we've got it the right size, I'm going to click export and we can go ahead and close GIMP, discard changes. So now we have this one that's the correct size. So to get this on the page, we need to come down to where we would like it to be. I'm thinking after the first subheading right here is usually a good spot. So we can have it on the left if that seems like a good choice, or we can have it float to the right. But what we need to do first is click the 3 dots over here on the right, the menu, button, the overflow button. We can go down to add before. So we add a new paragraph before this paragraph, but then we're going to type slash and then image, and it already knows that we want an image, so that's what I'm going to put. Then I'm going to go to the media library and I'm going to upload that image here. So we have our image here. I'm going to drag and drop it, and then I'm going to put a more descriptive alt text here. So a man is in his kitchen looking confused at his fancy wood blinds, which are ruined. Okay. Now it's leaving this big empty gap over here, and I don't like that, of course. So what we like to do is usually float it to the left or float it to the right. Right now it's not floating at all. It's just inline, or it's block level styling. So what we're going to do is click on the alignment here. We're going to say float right. So when you click the alignment button and you go to float right, what that does is it makes the image float to the right, but it also makes the text content that was below it come up and fill the gap on the left. So that's really important for websites to understand that images can float on either side, and if we float it to the left, the text does the same thing, it goes to the right. Okay, but if we don't float it, we just say align left, then there's a big empty space. So that's the default. We don't really like the default, so that's why we do float right. And that looks fine. So let's go ahead and click Save. And it should pretty much look exactly the same as it did in the back end, but we just want to make sure. That looks fine. I don't mind the text coming up kind of close to the edge of the image because it's on this side where there's plenty of white space. So it looks fine. And for now, that's probably fine. I might add another image later, but for now, that's all we really need to do for this SOP to show this is how we create images for blogs. I also showed how we create hero images, but it's basically the same process. You just want to make sure it's bigger, and then you crop it down if you need to, but in this case we should be good. So thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful, and please let us know if you have any questions.